So what we understood is that budget is a very, very useful tool for planning, right, and control. Now, there are several types of budgets, right? So, we can divide into different categories depending upon its function, right? Like on function based, we can create the budget based on functions. We can create budget based on flexibility. We can create budget based on the time frame, right? Like for example, on flexibility, it can be fixed and flexible. So, fixed budget is where I am preparing the budget on the basis of a particular production level. So, there is no scope for flexibility, right? But if I try to understand that if the production level changes, how my budget will change, right? Then I can use the flexible budget. Then it can be short term, it can be long term, right? And depending upon my need, right, I can make a monthly budget, a quarterly budget, half yearly budget. I can make budget for yearly budget, or I can make budget for several years together. The usual practice is the most common, the time frame is a year. So usually the companies prepare the budget for a year and then they divide it into half year, quarterly and monthly, and then on the basis of that they put the targets, right? So monthly targets or quarterly targets, half yearly targets and yearly targets. So that's the way. But the most popular way of classification is based on function. Now, as you can see that we can prepare the sales budget, production budget, raw material budget, purchase budget, labor budget, production overhead budget, selling and distribution budget, administration cost budget, capital expenditure budget and cash budget. So, so several types of budgets are possible, but actually what happens, this budget exercise usually it starts with the sales budget, because ultimately the goal of the company is to produce and sell, and the sales team, they have the idea, they have a kind of sense that what would be the future demand, forthcoming demand from the market. So, on the basis of that, they can give some inputs, and as I said earlier that it is a combined effort of sales team, HR team, operations team, finance team, all major teams, they come together and then they work together, do brainstorm, and then the budget is been prepared. So, the sales team is been asked that, okay, you tell us that in the next year, in the forthcoming year, what is the sales you are expecting. So, they give some idea, they do survey, they talk to the dealers, they talk to the customers, they try to foresee that what challenges could have come. They also may have some idea that what the action the competitors may take. So, based on that, they give some figures, some idea that, okay, in the next forthcoming year, next year, this is the kind of sales we think it is achievable, right? Once this figure is been fixed, right, then it goes to the production team. So, the production team needs to produce, right? So, based on the forecasting, based on the estimates given by the sales team, the production team, they make a production budget and they check that whether they are capable of producing the required volume of product or not. Do they have adequate capacity to produce? If they don't have, then what is the way out? Is there any possibility to outsource, or is there any possibility to increase the production volume? And production volume, again, in both the cases it requires some kind of additional capital, right, that the finance team need to take care of. But this estimation is essential. Fine. If the production team says that no, we can't, we are already running at full capacity and there is no scope for increasing the production level, then the sales team has to bring down their target. So, it is a continuous effort, right? It should be in sync. Once the production team finalizes the production budget, then the question comes, for production, you need resources. You need raw material, you need labor, you need overhead expenses, right? So, for this, for each of the item, then the budgets are being made. The material budget is been prepared, the labor budget is been prepared, the overhead budget is been prepared. When these things are finalized, that means there is some clarity, right? Some clarity before the management that, okay, next year this would be the market demand, and if we produce this much, uh, 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 hopefully we will be able to sell it in the market. But for achieving all this, you need funds, you need cash, right? So, you need to decide from where the cash will come, from where the funds will come. So, for that you need to prepare the cash budget, right? If any month, any period there is a cash shortfall, then the management has to think to fill that shortfall, right? If there is a surplus, of course, you need to think that where this surplus can be deployed, okay? So, you need to prepare the cash budget, and if you need expansion of capacity, you need to invest in capital assets. You need to buy machines, you need to construct new factory sheds, etc. So, for that you need to make capital expenditure. So, for that you have to prepare one capital expenditure budget, right? And when this overall volume increases, also your administrative cost also increases, right? You need to appoint more HR managers, more number of accountants, you need to create a larger administrative office, right? So, all these costs will also go up. So, for this you need to prepare another administrative expenses budget. Now, all these budgets, when this is prepared and they are all in sync, right? Combining all this, one budget is prepared which is called master budget, which encompasses everything, right? So, your budget is ready. Now, the next year, the forthcoming year will start. The company, the officials, they will start performing, and at the end of the next year, when the actual results will come, then this actual result and this budget will be compared, right? And will be seen that whether our performance is better or there is scope for improvement. Where is the scope for improvement? Is there any weak link? Have we missed something during the planning, etc., etc., right? And this is a continuous process which keeps on going year after year, month after month, quarter after quarter, okay? Right. Now, what we do? We will discuss each of the budget one by one. Okay. So, now we will discuss each of the types of budget one by one. The first one is sales budget. What is sales budget? It is the estimate of total sales which may be articulated in financial or quantitative terms. It normally forms the fundamental basis on which all other budgets are constructed. As I said earlier, this budgeting exercise, it starts with the sales budget. The first thing, it has been asked to the sales team, okay, next year, how much sales you are expecting, right? Give us a figure. Now, in practice, quantitative budget is prepared first, then it is translated into economic terms. While preparing the sales budget, the quantitative budget is generally the starting point in the operation of budgetary control, because sales becomes more often than not is the principal budget factor. So, everything starts from sales, right? Whatever I am producing, whatever I am doing it for what? I am doing it for selling it. So, sales budget is the starting form. Now, what are the factors? So, how the sales team basically do? Obviously, they take data from the historical figures. So, they see the past sales, right? Now, the salespeople, the salesmen who are active in the market, right? They have a kind of estimation, right? They have a kind of sense. They develop certain sense because they are in the market. So, based on that, they give an estimation. Okay, this much I think we will be able to sell. Then, is there any change in business policy or method, right? Like, for example, one company maybe till now it is working on increasing the volume. Now they are changing the policy and they want to get into the premium segment. Like for example, Maruti Suzuki, when it started operation in 1984, it started with a mission to manufacture common man's car. So Maruti 800, which was one of the cheapest car across the world, and it became very popular, and it gave a large market share to Maruti. And for years, Maruti's objective was to give a good quality car at a very reasonable price. But later on, what happened in recent years, it is entering into the premium segment. So they opened another line of production which they call Maruti Suzuki Nexa, right? So that means what their business policy, they are still producing the cars for the mass market, but still they are trying to get an entry into the premium segment also through their Nexa line of products. So this is a kind of change in business policy. Government policy controls. So government policy is a very major factor for any type of business, right? So government sometimes takes stand depending upon its social policy and other political policy, even political line also, to decide. They take a policy decision to encourage some factors. Like for example, now government is encouraging the electric vehicles, right? Because of this pollution control factors and sustainability factors, it is now a very important factor globally, right? And there are certain targets to be met, right? Sustainability targets to be met. So government is encouraging uh, 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 electric vehicles, right? Uh, Government is encouraging renewable energy resources. So the companies, those who are into those fields, they will try to avail these benefits, and it impacts ultimately the budget. Potential market and availability of material and supply. So see, I can foresee any amount of business, right? Suppose my product is very popular, and I can foresee that okay, lot of my product will be get sold in the market. But the point is, I need to produce it before selling, and for production I need material, right? So I need to ensure that whether the material and other factors of production, say for example skilled labor, right? uh, so what happens in most of the industry, they are often in short supply, right? Even if they are in supply, still they may not have um, uh, you know uh, they're not available in abundance. Their cost is high. That is also possible sometimes. If there's short supply, the cost may be high. So I need to put all these factors into the budget. If I don't have supply of material, then even if my market is there, I won't be able to produce and ultimately generate cash. So while preparing the sales budget, all these factors are important. What is my government policy? What is my company policy? Whether I have adequate material, labor and other factor of production is in place, right? And above all, how correctly I am being able to estimate my future sales, because at the end of the day, if all these exercise, they are futuristic, and future is always uncertain. So these things I need to take care of, right? So this budget exercise, it starts with the sales budget first. Once the sales budget is ready, then I need to find out, as I said, I need to check out that whether I have the capacity to produce that or not. So I will prepare what? I will prepare the production budget. The production budget is prepared on the basis of estimated production of budget period. Usually the production budget is based on sales budget. At the time of preparing the budget, the production manager will consider the physical facilities like plant, power, space, material and labor. So while the underlying factor is whether I am capable of production or not. I have a market estimate. I am say next year's estimate is that we will be able to sell 10,000 units in a year. But will I be able to produce 10,000 units? Now there are several ways. Now, in two ways I can address this issue. One way is that I can increase my capacity, right? So, while I will increase my capacity, I need to see that whether this demand is sustainable or not. Is it a one-time demand because of certain event, right? Or will it sustain? Like for example, at the time of COVID, the demand for the COVID vaccines, it skyrocketed, right? But it did not sustain. Now the COVID is gone, the demand for COVID vaccines have come down, right? So I need to find out, I need to check out whether it is sustainable. If it is not sustainable, and if I add, a lot of production, additional production capacity now, then it may happen that after some time, that production capacity will remain idle, which is actually can result into loss for the company. So that is one important thing. Second is that I may not increase my production capacity myself, but I can give it to someone else, some third party, right? I can give it to third party and he can produce and supply to me, and then I can sell, right? But there are certain other issues, like for example, how I will check the quality factor. If I give it to some other person, some third party to produce my product, will I be able to control the quality, right? For outsourcing, should I give complete outsourcing or should I give a part of it, right? Should I manufacture the critical components myself, and the non-critical components I can give it to someone else? So these are the answers to these questions. They are not easy, right? They are not easy to answer. So, but these are essential questions. So these questions, the production manager must thought of. Lot of brainstorming should go on after this. Now, it may be expressed, the budget I can express in terms of quantities or money or both. Usually, in manufacturing companies, what happens, this budget is prepared in quantity terms and then gets converted into monetary terms. The budget shows the estimated cost of production. The production budget demonstrates the capacity of production. These capacities of production are expressed in terms of cost in production cost budget. It is shown in detail in respect of material cost, labor cost, overhead cost, etc., etc. So these are the segregations, right, which we have already studied, that we can add direct material, direct labor, direct expense, arrive at the prime cost. With that, I can add production overhead, so I can get the cost of production. So I can make the budget estimate of all these costs, right, in sync with the sales budget, which is given by the marketing department. Okay, so that's the way. Okay. So after the production budget is complete, as I said, that in the production budget, there is a part of it is the material budget, because when I am planning for the production, I need to find out that whether adequate material is available or not, or how much material I need to procure ultimately, right? So that I can match the production level, and that production level should match the expected sales level. So raw material budget is prepared next, which is material budget is prepared with an intention to determine standard material cost per unit, and consequently it involves quantities to be used and the rate per unit. This budget shows the expected quantity of all the raw materials and components needed for production demanded by the production budget. It serves the following purposes. It supports the purchasing department, of course. Requirement of raw material is decided, because you need to get into agreement with the suppliers beforehand, right? If we don't do that, then what will happen? The production assembly line may get hampered. So workers will wait at the assembly line, but in the supply chain, there may be a supply chain bottleneck, right? So that is not a desirable situation. I need to avoid that. So what I will do is, I will make a raw material budget. I will estimate how much raw material I will need to achieve a given level as given in production budget, which is in sync with the sales budget. And then this I will enter into agreement with the raw material suppliers and the vendors, and I will ensure that my assembly line, my production line will get the supply of right amount of and right kind of raw material at right time. Okay. Then, so raw material budget I will prepare, right? Then I will prepare the labor budget. So, first major factor of production is material. But who will convert this raw material into finished products? Of course, the laborers, right? Laborers. Now, workers, the employees, I need to employ, uh, you know, adequate number of people. And not only that, the people whom I employ, they should be adequately skilled, right? If they are not skilled, then what will happen? The wastage will increase, right? My cost will increase, the output will be inferior, the customers will be unhappy, so they will not buy. Or so, there is a chain effect of everything. So you must understand, whatever action the company will take, every action has a reaction, and there is a chain. All these factors are interlinked, and there is a chain reaction to it, right? So all these things I need to perceive beforehand. So if already the fault has happened, right, and then if I rectify, again my cost will increase. So I have to perceive these possibilities, all kinds of possibilities beforehand, right, and act accordingly. If it is already planned, as I said earlier, our objective is to avoid nasty surprises. We don't want nasty surprises, right? Okay. So for that, whatever we have to do, we have to do. So labor. So we will prepare a labor budget, right? So we will decide that for achieving a production level, how many numbers of employees we need, skilled, unskilled, semi-skilled, what could be the salary, because if you need more skilled workers, you have to pay more. If your work goes on even with less skilled workers, your salary cost will be less. But at the same time, if your employees are not skilled enough, you may have to spend for their training, right? You may have to spend for their training. So this training again will add cost to you. So this also you need to perceive, right? What kind of training is required, particularly as the technology is improving very fast, the requirement of training is also growing, right? So this needs to be taken care of and need to be included in the labor budget. So in the production budget, the first element is material, the second element is the labor. The third element, which is becoming very significant nowadays because of advancement of technology, is the overhead budget. Overhead is the sum of indirect material plus indirect labor plus indirect expenses, right? So if I add these three, I get the overhead. Now, because the technology is getting advanced and production system is becoming more mechanized, the overhead cost is becoming higher. So I need to anticipate that what overhead cost we may incur in the forthcoming year if I have to achieve a certain production level. I can divide this overhead cost into two categories, which is one is fixed, other one is the variable, right? Fixed overheads will remain same, whatever be the production level within a given production limit and within a time span, it will not change, right? It will remain same. And the variable overheads, of course, they change over the time, right? There is a third type, which is actually the mix of fixed overhead and the variable overhead. It is called the semi-variable overhead, right? That's also quite common. The production overhead budget engages the preparation of overheads budget for each division of the factory, as it is desirable to have estimates of manufacturing overheads prepared by those overheads to have the responsibility for incurring them. Service department costs are projected and allocated to the production departments in proportion of the services received by each department. Usually what happens, for the services industry, like for example banks, hotels, right? So companies which are in services industry, which belongs to services industry, their overhead is quite, high, right? They usually their material cost is low, but the proportion of overhead in the cost structure is quite high, right? In the manufacturing companies, there are different support systems. Like one of the very good example of it, finance department. The finance department is basically a supporting division, right? Supporting department. So the expenses, the salaries paid to the professionals there, right? That you need to adjust, you need to estimate, right? And here some subjectivity creeps in, right? Some subjectivity creeps in, because direct material and direct labor you can directly assign to the final product, but overheads you cannot directly assign. So you need to allocate. When you will allocate or apportion, right, then some subjective elements will come into the picture. Our basically what management wants is that while doing the apportion, it should be logical and it should be closer to reality. It should not be exactly like the reality, right? But it should be as close as possible with the reality. Okay. Then the next one is, so once it is done, so sales budget said that sales budget, they say that this is my sales and all, and target, and then production happened. Within production budget is material, labor and overhead, and then comes the selling and distribution cost budget. Selling and distribution cost budget. So selling and distribution cost budget is what? The estimation of cost of selling, right? Advertising, delivery of goods to the customers, etc. So production is done. Now the last mile from the storage of the company to the to the ultimate customer, the ultimate consumer, right? This path needs to be crossed, right? And for crossing this path, the companies needs to spend something. They can spend in form of creating awareness through advertisement, or through delivery, through distribution, because ultimately you need to reach that product to the ultimate customer, right? So this involves certain amount of cost. This cost needs to be estimated, right? If your product is new, right, then this selling and distribution cost budget can be quite substantial, right? If your brand is not known, then it could be quite substantial. If your product is aspirational in nature, right, then this budget can be quite substantial. On the other hand, if your product falls under the necessity goods, right, like grocery, for example, then this cost may not be that high, right? If your brand is very, very strong, right, strong recall value, the customer already remembers your name, so then you may not have spent much for advertisement, right? So it depends, right? It depends. And this budget is closely related to the sales budget, which we discussed earlier, because sales budget gives us a sales forecast, right? And this budget tells us that how much additional cost I need to incur for making those sales. Okay. So the selling and distribution cost is the estimating of cost of selling, advertising, delivery of goods to customers, etc. throughout the budget period. This budget is closely associated to sales budget in the logic that sales forecast significantly influence the forecast of these expenses. Nevertheless, all other linked information should also be taken into consideration in the preparation of selling and distribution budget. The sales manager is responsible for selling and distribution cost budget. Naturally, he prepares this budget with the help of managers of subdivisions of the sales department. The preparation of this budget would be based on the analysis of market condition, and as I said, that it depends on so many things. It depends on some market condition, it depends upon your strength of your brand, the nature of your product. So these things are important. Now we started with the sales, we went to the production budget, then we went in the production budget we prepared material budget, labor budget, overhead budget, then we prepared the selling and distribution cost budget. Now for running all these things we need one administration, right? There must be some administrative infrastructure in place, right? So to keep maintaining and running those administrative structure, we need to prepare a budget which is called administration cost budget, right? Administration cost budget. Uh, uh, we need to employ administrative manager, the administrative staffs. You need to maintain one office space, right? You need to maintain, keep on supplying stationaries. You need some equipments, computers, etc. in the office, right? You need to maintain internet, good quality internet. So all this comes under the administrative cost budget, right? For these are basically a large part of is actually fixed, right? They are not directly linked to the production, proportional to the your production level, right? It usually it is fixed. In some cases, it can be semi-variable also. Now, you prepared sales budget, you prepared production budget. Under production budget, you prepared material budget, labor budget, overhead budget. Then you prepared selling and distribution cost budget. Then to run all these things, you prepared administrative cost budget. And then you found that you need to you are under capacity, right? So under capacity means you have two options. One option is you increase your capacity or you outsource, right? If you want to increase your capacity, then you have to invest in you have to make some capital expenditure. You need to buy machines, you need to build factory sheds, you need space for that, land for that, and all these things. So if it is required, then you have to prepare one budget which is called capital expenditure budget. This budget stands for the expenditure on all fixed assets for the duration of the budget period. It is normally prepared for a longer period than the other functional budgets, because this capital expenditure budgets, it is usually goes over few years, right? Like if I buy a machine, the lifetime of the machine may be 5 years. So I have to, in the budget, I have to incorporate that the machine will go for, I have to pay for the machine right now, but it will give me service for next 5 years. But I am preparing an annual budget. So I need to make that provisioning, right? This budget is normally prepared for a longer period than the other functional budgets. It includes such items as new buildings, land, machinery, and intangible items like patents, etc. It is designed under the observation of an account which is supported by plant engineer and functional managers. In fact, the entire, this budgeting exercise, right? Entire budgeting exercise, it is actually a joint effort of all the departments, right? They should work together, brainstorm together, and come out with the solution. Thank you.